Episode 2 starts off showing Helly's Audi making the video recording that we saw her innie watch in the first episode. Then Mr. Milchek takes her on a tour of the building, talking of the great Keir Egan, whom we will learn much more about as the season progresses. But we are already getting the idea that Keir is very much a godlike figure to Lumen employees. We then see that Mr. Milchek was actually the one who performed the severance procedure on Helly, one of the many hats that he wears for Lumen. Next scene, we see the sequence play out from Helly's perspective when her innie kept trying to leave and was greeted by Mr. Milchek each time as he explained to her what was going on. She said, "I don't want to be in there, do I?" He responded, "You'll learn that you do." He then said, "When we heard that you were coming, it was like a miracle. It's amazing what you are doing." Mark shows up first to work the next day, as he is now the department chief for micro data refinement, or MDR as they call it. He took over as department chief last episode because PD left. He is doing his morning routine when the picture of the team with PD in it throws him off. He gathers the pictures from everyone else's desks and he puts them away in the storage closet. Helly shows up next and her mind is blown that a weekend has gone by, because she can't tell that any time has actually passed at all. Mark tells her to focus on the effects of sleep since they don't get to experience it themselves. Dylan is then explaining the reward system to Helly for finishing files, with the biggest reward of them all being a waffle party for the top MDR rep of the quarter, which Dylan says he's a lock to get this time. Irv notices that the pictures were removed from the desks, and he is not happy about this. Irv is very much a company man, and he likes to follow things by the book, so any bit of change really throws him off. Mark explains that they are taking the new photos today. Then Mark is training Helly on the job, and Irv just can't let it go. He says the photos should have stayed on the desk until the new ones come in, because that's how it's supposed to go. Helly is then getting taught what to do in her job, and she's very confused with the numbers on the screen, and she doesn't even know what they do or why they do it. But for now, Mark is just trying to explain to her that each set of numbers should elicit an emotional response in the refiner. Some numbers can even be scary, but it won't make sense until she sees it herself. Helly asks Mark if she is trapped. If she wants to quit, is that even an option? Mark explains that she could submit a request to her Audi, but they usually don't get approved. He also explains that quitting would effectively end her life, the only one that she knows anyway, since if she never came back to Lumen as a severed employee, this side of her that holds all the gripes would never be awake again. The team are then gathered up by Mr. Milchek as they head over to a team building exercise as part of Helly's ongoing orientation. During this exercise, Helly again shows signs of unhappiness and even wants to record a message back to her Audi. She then learns that the elevators are equipped with code detectors, and any messages they try to sneak to their Audis would be caught. So she can't write a note or anything like that. And it's a very strict policy that they must follow. During the trust exercise, Mark admits that he broke protocol when he got rid of the group photo with Petey. It didn't make him feel comfortable when he saw the picture, so he had to get rid of it. Irv confirms this, and he said that he objected to it. Again, company man. Mark then says he's worried that Petey could be dead, and he has no idea where he is or if he's safe. Mr. Milchek then adamantly jumps in and says, "Hey, death happens outside of Lumen. A life at Lumen protects you from such things because you will never need to know about it." The group then get ready for their group photo. Keeping along with the theme here, Helly is not having it, and she looks very uncomfortable when they are trying to take the photo. She then storms off, says she's not going to work here anymore, writes down "I quit" on a post-it note, and storms off towards the elevator. Helly is able to get on the elevator, but that's about it. The elevator doesn't even shut, and alarms start going off. Then Mr. Grainer, who Petey said was after him last episode, goes and takes the note off of Helly and says, "Perhaps you should come with me." Mark stops them and claims it's his fault because he must have forgotten to go over the data smuggling rules with Helly. And he says this is on him, and he apologizes. Mark then goes down a dark and mysterious hallway to a waiting Miss Cobell. We were then transported to Audi Mark, who was on a date with someone that his sister set him up with. She asks about Lumen, and he confirms that he has no recollection of work. He has no idea what's going on inside there. And she says that really must mess with your head. And he said, "I think for some people, that is the whole point. to forget for a little while, to turn off your brain, that you don't have to think about certain things and you can just shut off, go to work, and that's that. At this point, Mark is still very content with keeping his job because he doesn't want to face getting over his wife, who tragically died in a car accident. Mark and his date are then walking down the block and they see people protesting Lumen. They cross the street and they see what's going on. They're handing out pamphlets claiming wrongdoings, including forced labor. Mark takes offense to this and they get into a big argument. Nice way to end the date, Mark. The next day, Mark was getting ready to go into work, but then he sees the flyer from the protesters from last night. This makes him want to call out sick and head to the address that Petey gave him. Back in the office, Dylan continues telling Helly about the reward system. Then Irv starts spacing out and we see some black goo that looks like paint start to form all around his work area. Turns out he was just dozing off, which he has done in the past. Mr. Milchick was right there to witness it, and he is not happy. Then we see Mark. He's at the address that Petey gave to him. Finally, he sees Petey. He's there. Then we're back in the office. Mr. Milchick takes Irv to see Miss Casey for a, quote, wellness check to begin his penance for falling asleep on the job again. Helly asks Dylan if he has any idea of what they are actually doing with the numbers. Dylan comes up with a wild theory that says they are populating the sea with probes. It's a wild theory that doesn't make much sense, but then he says that Irv thinks they are just cutting swear words out of movies. So they really have no idea what's going on. And in a perfect transition, this is exactly what Petey and Mark are talking about at the same time. Petey says, even though he's had his severance procedure reversed, he still doesn't know what they were actually doing with the numbers. But he did tell Mark he began a project mapping out the entire area of the severed access floor, everything that he can remember and exactly what spot they are in. He tells Mark that he hid the original map for him when he left so that Mark can find it. They think that if they can map the floor completely, that things will start to make more sense. Petey then gets a ringing headache in what he calls reintegration sickness. He tells Mark he can't even go home because people are after him, so he's been living out in the cold in a greenhouse. Petey then tells Mark about the break room. This is where Mark's innie was the day before when he took the fall for Helly. This is the place they get sent off when they don't act right. Petey plays a recording of Mark's innie repeating the same sentence over and over again to apologize for his actions. We now know that the break room is essentially a place for innies to be tortured during work. Back to Irv. While waiting for his wellness check, he meets Christopher Walken's Bert from Optics and Design. This is the first character that we met that doesn't work for MDR. Then we meet Miss Casey, who is running the wellness check. She starts it off by sharing some facts about Irv's Audi, which is meant to be pleasing, but the facts are not to be shared outside the room. She says some things like, your Audi is generous. Your Audi is fond of music and owns many records. Your Audi is a friend to children and to the elderly and to the insane. Irv begins to laugh. Miss Casey stops him and says, please enjoy each fact equally. She then takes 10 points off and says he has 90 points remaining. This confuses Irv. He speaks again. She says you can't speak any further or all remaining points will be deducted and the wellness session will end. Helly bugs Dylan about the scanners, trying to find a loophole so she can get a message to her Audi. She wants to know if she can write it on her body, if she can use different symbols, any way around getting a message to her Audi. But then it happens. She's looking at her numbers and she starts to see it. She points at the screen and says, that. Dylan says, you'll be okay. Just fence off the bad data like I told you. She refines the file, says, wow, that was scary. The numbers are scary. Then we see Mark has taken Petey back to his house. He's letting him stay in his basement since he doesn't want him staying in the greenhouse anymore. Petey is already in bad shape, so Mark just feels bad letting him stay out there. So he opens his home to him. Petey then goes into the bathroom and he's going through a lot of pain. His nose starts bleeding profusely and he's not doing well. He jumps in the shower, the ringing headache comes back, and it continues to get worse. He slumps down to a seat in the shower, sitting down, and the episode ends with Mark asking, Petey, Are you okay?
Big thanks to Dan from Scene Invaders for doing that recap. Go check out their channel and subscribe. If you don't see the next episode in the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a few days. Be nice in the comment section, and I have a Patreon, so go support the channel by buying a t-shirt or signing up for the Patreon.